Hello, everyone. Welcome. Just before we really get into today's program, I want to introduce myself. My name is Mackenzie Merriman. I'm the program coordinator at Julia Bengtsson Cultural Arts Center, and I've been honored to work with our Support for Artists grant. It's a grant that we received from Cuyahoga Arts and Culture for the first time last year to distribute funds to local artists and support their projects. And as we all know, many creatives had to go back to the drawing board. And today's program is a deeper look into one of our artist programs, Strangers, which is a new ballet from Devin Hinzo, our Support for Artists recipient. And we just want to kind of look at how the creative process was impacted and how a creative team can modify and adapt in the face of an unprecedented year. So I'm really excited to hear from the team today. And why don't I pass it over to Devin for an introduction?
Thanks, Mackenzie. Hi, my name's Devin Hinzo. I am an oboist, but I also do a bunch of other things like produce ballets, run organizations and events. I'm really excited about this project because it's been a way for me to get back into a music practice after such a long time of being on a break and not really having anything to do. But yeah, I'm really grateful for the Support for Artists grant that I received from Julia Bengtsson Cultural Arts Center. It really helped with getting us this project to where we needed to be at that point in 2020, the very early stages of this ballet. So thank you. I want to introduce my creative team, who have been just really important pieces of this puzzle. I'll introduce Julia Bengtsson.
Thank you, Devin. Hi, my name is Julia Bengtsson. I'm a choreographer originally from Sweden, but based in New York. And Devin, I don't know what you meant there with having nothing to do. Whenever I see you, you're always like hard at work. So I don't know. I don't recognize that in you, but I believe you. This project has really been what has been keeping me going this pandemic, having something to look forward to and something that's so inspiring. Brian and I have been working together for years now, and his music is incredible. So it's definitely it's a passion project, and I'm so excited that we're able to do this and seeing it change from what it was in the beginning of 2020 to what it's become now. I'm really excited in moving forward. And I, like you, Devin, I do a lot of things. I choreograph everything from classical ballets to direct Baroque operas and make really interesting avant-garde dance films. But I'm really excited about this and how Strangers ties together so many of the different things that I do, both in historical dance and in contemporary dance. So over to Brian.
Thanks, Julia. Hi, my name is Brian Morales. I'm the composer for this ballet, Strangers. It is an interesting time, definitely. Actually, it's kind of funny because you talk with other composers during like pandemic time, and they're like, "Well, what's the big deal? Stay at home and just write." That's what I do all the time. And so it is actually really nice to just be a creative person and like have ideas of like what would this be like on stage, and then have it realized. And so I'm really grateful for Julia Bengtsson Cultural Arts Center because like that's the reality right now. Like we're creating something and it's gonna happen. So I'm just ecstatic about this project. Julia and I have been working together for years, like she said, and I really like the synergy that we have together. She brings a lot to the table, being an immigrant, and I think that's kind of been this focus that we've worked on in our work. So I think having the time to kind of gestate on the idea of what this ballet is about and develop it has turned out to be a blessing in disguise. And I think when we get to the end of this whole thing, I think you'll be really happy with it. So yeah, I'll send it back to Mackenzie.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. I have worked with a variety of artists on a variety of projects, but never an original ballet with so much original work from a diverse team of artists. So I'm completely humbled to be here and excited to learn some from you all. So let's look at, the initial idea for Strangers and that planning that was happening, a year ago before everything shut down. Can you give just a brief history of the ballet and some of the concepts and inspiration behind it?
Sure. So in 2019, summer of 2019, Brian and I have been friends for a while now, and my organization that I was running at the time, FP Creative, was getting ready for our second season of producing concerts here in Cleveland. And I wanted to do something at the very end with an ensemble that we had in residence, a woodwind quintet, but something that was a bit more theatric. And so Brian arrived at a ballet. And I don't know if I necessarily said that it needs to have a political edge or something, but I was more interested in storytelling and, whatever arrives from that, I was pretty open. So, he introduced me to Julia, and they kind of got to work and started, Brian started writing music late 2019. And we got to January 2020, and it was getting closer to the original premiere was set for May 2020, May 2020. But we were planning, getting ready for this, and the pandemic happened, and we had to cancel 3 shows, including Strangers. And we were trying really hard throughout the summer to find a way to do another live performance. And it was just not possible, not knowing what the future would hold, how badly we would not have this under control. And to be honest, it was really challenging for me. And I know for a lot of musicians as well, to all of our work was gone. And, we were sort of we knew we were the last groups to be able to return to normal, or whatever that is.
Especially woodwind players.
Right. And woodwind players especially have a hard time because, we use our air to make sounds. And a lot of string players were able to get back to work, but I know even wind players in professional orchestras still were out of work well into the fall. But, we kept at it, we kept chatting, and eventually we were like, okay, this cannot exist in a live form right now. What are we going to do? And we arrived at a film, a sort of cinematic approach to a ballet. And from there, it turned into a really exciting idea, because I've never worked in this medium. I maybe made a music video and I started messing around with video, but never something like this. And I thought it would be really cool to see ballet in a cinematic movie film type presentation, as opposed to, when you go to see a ballet on stage and you're a lot further from the action, and you can't really see people's facial expressions close. And so, yeah.
Okay, thank you for all of that. I totally hear you on kind of the silver lining to having to think a little bit harder about how we present our artworks to audiences. I'm curious, I know you've mentioned storytelling is at the root of this and immigration is behind it. So what is the story of this ballet? What can audiences expect?
That's a good question. I think if we're looking back at where this all came from, kind of the tenor of American politics from 2018, 19, or even 2016, really. Immigration has always been an easy target. It's a very easy scapegoat, especially when the people being accused can't speak a language to defend themselves. So this ballet is sort of that response. Um, it it takes a bit of a position, but really it more just like asks the question of whether we're even aware of what's going on. When Julie and I engaged in this project, we did a little research, and I was surprised at some of the things that I learned. Um, and of course, like it's hard dealing with tragedy when you're in storytelling in a way that's like too real, and that's or well, at least that's what's great about storytelling is we can kind of rearrange it so it's more digestible, so it's more neutral, and you're less biased in receiving the information. But the story is divided into three parts, and it derives from this Italian folk tale about a girl who discovers this like magical den with kittens, and she just out of like good nature, she kind of helps the kittens complete their chores, and then they reward her. But then, of course, she has an evil stepsister that sees this reward, and she also wants to know, she wants that reward too. And of course, she bullies the sister into telling her where the den is, and she goes down, and she doesn't help at all. And so, of course, the kittens reward her accordingly. But then there's this whole angle about Aesop's fables, or there's an Aesop fable about a wolf and a lamb, which takes place in this like part two. So part two basically is derived from an Aesop fable called The Wolf and the Lamb, where this lamb is kind of splashing around in the water, and the wolf's like drinking, and he accuses the wolf, or accuses the lamb that the wolf is, or that accuses the lamb that the lamb is muddying up the water that he's trying to drink. And the lamb says, well, that's impossible, you're upstream from me. And then the wolf was just like, well, then I heard you called me like mean names a year ago. And the lamb is like, well, that's impossible, I was born 6 months ago. And then the wolf is like, well, then it was your cousin then. And he just devours him whole. And there's this like idea of like, the moral of that fable is that evil finds a way to justify itself over and over again. And so whatever position you want to take in that in politics, I think like this like whataboutism culture of just like you're to blame, like that kind of like pushes us in the area that we're in now. The final part is kind of like encompassing of all three parts. We use an old Renaissance style called Commedia dell'arte. And I think it's so interesting because Commedia dell'arte has these stereotypical characters that represent behaviors that we all kind of understand. There's a universality to them. And the fact that there's a character in Commedia dell'arte known as Zani, who's kind of at the bottom of the totem pole, who's always looking up, comes from the country looking for work in the big city. I think like that is something that has been an issue that like keeps coming up over and over again. And I think like that's something that I hope that the audience would think about, is like this is not a new excuse. This isn't a new issue. We've seen this before. What we do with this ballet, we kind of we reveal tragedy in a way that hopefully would make you provoke some sort of thought and encourage you to look at what's going on at the U.S. border right now in contemporary themes. And that's essentially it.
Yeah, I think it's thanks for sharing that, Brian. And I think it's interesting, from why Commedia dell'arte, for those who might not know, like, especially when you go through music training, it's a really important period of time. And so we learn about it, but, characters like Petrushka or Harlequin, Colombina, these are all characters from Commedia dell'arte. And when you said that these issues have been existing, since before our time, it made us think while we were preparing for this, we have this election coming up. is this, going to be still valid or still, a topic that's worth discussing after, what happens? And, that goes for either way. For, if we had kept the same president, got a new administration. And even now that we have a new administration, I think it's such an important topic because there's still a lot of misunderstanding. And what I think that this story does is, okay, yeah, we're dressing up, the story of immigrants and casting a different light on them. But we respond, like you say, we respond differently when we see those kinds of things. When you see, anthropomorphized kittens and, interacting with humans, or, we all know that, violence is never the answer. So why would the wolf eat the lamb? Or, can't we sympathize with someone just trying to find a better life for themselves? So, and I still think that today, even with the new administration, that this topic is going to be important for a very, beyond our time as well. But we hope that this story sheds light and offers some humanity to the topic.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of, from the folklore to the fables to the commedia. It dramatizes the character that we play in other people's lives even, and it sounds like you're exploring how you treat others. And I was going over the idea of like how we treat others in my brain, and then I landed on the title, Strangers. And I haven't seen any of the piece, I haven't heard any of it. I'm really excited to, but even just this discussion around the flow of the piece is revealing a lot to me. So that's super cool. Do we want to get into some of the excerpts that we're going to visit today? Yeah.
Sure. I thought I'd share a short video clip of a rehearsal of Strangers. And this rehearsal was recorded at Connecticut Ballet in preparation for the Connecticut Ballet Summer Tour of 2020, a pandemic tour. So we performed outdoors for audiences that were separated. They were spread out all across outside. It was beautiful, and to see people's reactions too. To art, because they haven't been able to see live performances for several months, was really powerful. So I thought we'd watch a short part of Act 1 of Strangers, the part of the girl arriving at the home of the two cats.
Well, that was super cool. I loved how the kittens were teaching her how to do the chores, I think is what I saw there. So that was really cool. I'm curious how does a ballet company approach rehearsing with all of these restrictions, and then just how did the process look? I know that the ballet has all these different moving parts. How did you approach the choreography and the rehearsing with your dance partners?
Yeah, I'm a member of the Connecticut Ballet, which is a state company of Connecticut. And I think I admire how they've handled this pandemic, where most companies have sort of, gone underground for now. We have been working quite a lot since starting the summer. We did this outdoor tour, and after Christmas, we've been back, weekly testing and mask required, of course. Really rigorous, safe programs in place to offer dancers work at this time, because it's really been almost a year of canceled tours and performances and premieres like strangers. So it's been really tough. So this was the first piece I ever choreographed on a professional ballet company. So really exciting for me and a milestone. And I was able to pick my dancers. So dancing with me here in this clip is two of my colleagues, Anastasia Fedorova and Abby Marchessault. And I was restricted to a small group, but actually this plan that we had of a chamber ballet fit perfectly into COVID restrictions that way. We're only 4 dancers, including myself. So that's a pretty safe plan for this time. So yeah, usually in Connecticut Ballet, the director was very kind and generous in offering me rehearsal space. And you can see the studios are big enough to spread out. So we've been rehearsing, our regular hours. Yeah, that's how you rehearse during COVID with masks and social distancing, and weekly testing is really important.
And so I know that we'll be recording the music in the coming months. So how are you able to rehearse to the music without that being recorded?
That's right. Brian has fully adjusted here to a time when recording in person becomes very hard. And I know that Devin is working hard with the rest of the musicians to coordinate schedules and to make up a safe plan for everyone. But when this was recorded back in September, we did not have the music ready. So Brian made this excellent mock-up that I've been using for choreography. And together with the score, I'm able to create most of the choreography in preparation for the real recording that I will receive sometime in April. So,
and just curious, Julia, what will make the most difference in you get the live recording? What is that going to add to the performance for you?
So much. The music is the primary source of inspiration that I draw, and let's see who. I just don't want to misquote this. Balanchine said that dance should be a visualization of the music, but I see it as with choreography. I hope to shine light on something that was in the music, but maybe wasn't obvious to the first time listener. So how can I bring out how I hear the music? And I think I had a lot of fun working with the cat piece and doing that and accenting all these small accents that I could hear, but hearing getting the real recording with actual musicians playing the music will really inform all those accents and hidden gems that I hear where the cat is like, I don't know, meowing for help, or whatever that might be, a slight tone that I'm able to bring out and actually realize. It's like a small picture, it's a glimpse of a picture that I get when I listen to it, but to actually act it out. um, yeah, and as you can see in this recording, I'm working a lot with the cat-like quality of the music of these walls. So I had a lot of fun playing with the principles of Commedia dell'arte, and I've done some historical research in dance previously, but never into Commedia dell'arte. So I had a lot of fun reading sources from the 1500s and how these characters move. And then the cat is not a um, stereotype of commedia dell'arte. So how do I apply those principles onto a different kind of character? And drawing parallels, of course, between how Zani moves and how the cats move. There are some parallels there. And I also got to learn an entirely new skill, which is making these masks that we're wearing in the video. So how to mold it on top of a face, and adding these features using clay. And I spent a lot of time looking at profiles of cats to get the real true. Yeah, so this was one of the first masks I made after the prototypes, of course, and I think they turned out pretty well. So now I'm making more masks for all the other characters, and I just made this. It's not quite finished, as you can see. It's like a rougher, but I made this Zani mask using the principles of Commedia dell'arte and enlargening parts of the face in order to emphasize certain personality traits, which is funny enough. That's how I work with choreography as well. When I make up movements, so much of it is in the music, but then I go right into storytelling and what is this character? What does he want? What is he trying to do? Like, what's his intention is so important. So, if the cats are kind of like hunched over from doing housework all day and those kind of things. But so here you can see like Sani has these huge bags under his eyes. The lighting is kind of bad, but you can see there. And these very large eyes, as if, he's seen a lot and he's very tired, and it's kind of creased here. Yeah, I've had a lot of fun studying that as a movement artist.
You also learned how to read music for this.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, Brian is giving me such amazing music. Like, I have to make sure I get it right, right?
That is pretty impressive, though. I don't know many choreographers that read the music too.
That is very true. I think there are a lot of choreographers that they abuse the music a little bit, and I don't want to take part in that. So to me, learning to read music better has been a goal for a long time. And with my crazy schedule of working 7 days a week, I've never had the kind of time that the pandemic suddenly allowed me when, my tour of a month was canceled and I found myself at home, like taking walks every day. Like what? To pour my time into something that felt really important, like this project, and how to learn how to do my profession better felt so meaningful and important at this time.
Julia, that's really exciting that you got to expand your skills as an artist while still producing, a ballet. That's really impressive. Speaking of the music, I'm really excited to hear more about what that process is, how you compose work for a ballet, or even what your experience was like on this specific project. Brian, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. With every piece, it's really just finding the catalyst that like leads to the next thing. And I try to keep an open mind on all approaches, but with this one, it really started with the cats, or it started with the sisters and the cats. Sorry, but there's just like this idea of like a motive going up for one sister and a motive going down for the other sister, and that like duality just plays over and over again, however you want, in the ballet, in the theme of immigration, just in our day-to-day lives of like who we ascribe to be and who we end up being, or like it goes over and over again. But that just like teased out so much material for the music. The Especially writing for woodwind quintet is really hard. Actually, it's not an ensemble that allows for a lot. And I mean, like, you can look at like even like some contemporary composers like Ligeti, like they only go so far because it's just a very different animal from other musical forces. And in
Ryan,
fact, yeah.
do you mind, like, for people who don't know what's in a woodwind quintet,
Oh, yeah.
saying what's in it and maybe what makes your approach different?
Sure. A woodwind quintet is comprised of a flute, oboe, clarinet, horn, and bassoon. So horn's kind of interesting because it's considered a brass instrument, but traditionally, like, this ensemble's existed for a while, and the horn just kind of blends nicely with those four. These are the traditional orchestral woodwinds, and I think that's why we call it a woodwind quintet. The ensemble itself is just such a unique mixture of colors. Like, the flute is very bright, whereas like the oboe is very piercing, the clarinet's very mellow, the horn is even more mellow, the bassoon is like bright but in a darker, it's like dark chocolate. And like all these sounds are not as homogenous as, say, like a string quartet. So like it's something to just like, in orchestrating it, there's just a lot of thought of going into how do I make this work. And it was hard to stretch out 40 minutes of music, but we did it with the approach that the strategy that I used to make this kind of last as long as I could was just implementing percussion. The percussionist mainly plays marimba and primarily acts as just kind of like a harmonic kind of additive source. Like, they don't contribute much as like the rest of the ensemble, but when they do have moments that they stand out. But really, they just kind of add support when one of the musicians need rest, essentially. And also just like for the audience to hear something, they hear something that doesn't always sound like woodwind quintet. That's kind of the strategy of how we get it across, but I think it really works. It's a nice mixture of colors. The piece actually that I've prepared for you guys is it incorporates everything, and it bounces through a bunch of different styles because it's primarily focused around the storytelling. So sometimes with ballets, like, they'll just do like a chunk of music that's kind of one thing, and then choreographer does what they will to that. And then other times it's more just like beat points of like, this point is happening in the story, this point. So the piece that I've prepared for you is more of the latter. Just kind of different key elements are happening. So, what's happening right now in this story is we've had this character Zani from the beginning of the ballet all the way to this point, and it's been leading up to getting to this threshold, this border, this once Zani crosses the line, opportunity awaits. But Zani's met by this threshold guardian, this kind of sheriff, this swarthy sheriff who's not keen on just letting anybody in across the threshold. And of course, the first thing he does is alert the authority. The authority is the commandant, which in Commedia dell'arte, commandant is a very interesting character because he kind of has this bravado. He's very full of himself. He's very pompous. And at the same time, at the first sign of trouble, will often just run away with his tail between his legs. But you'll hear in this music at the beginning, it's the entrance of the commandant, and it's this very pompous kind of march. And like, to me, like whenever I read a march, like there's just something so like in your face of just like, pay attention to me. It's the march, like I'm important. And so what I did with this was actually, at one point you'll hear both voices in canon where they're kind of playing the same thing, but at different times. And it's just sort of, I picture it as sort of like the commandant is giving commands and the person following is like, yes, of course, do that. So like, do this, yes, I'll do that, to that. And that's the whole beginning, is just kind of this bravado on display. But then the next part is sort of like him encountering these little Zanis that are trying to get across. And he even, what's even crazier is that the commandant gives permission to like punish the Zanis. And like maybe you'll even hear that in the music. And the final bit is Zani escaping in this commotion. So the piece is called Entrance and Commotion. Yeah, so the music was prepared just using a MIDI sequencer, a DAW, and we're kind of fortunate right now to live in a time where technology is so advanced that I can really get down to like the details of what it would probably sound like, a pretty close representation of it. And that's also proved to be really effective in rehearsing during COVID. I was able to create just a mock-up track of all the parts so that the musicians can actually hear it and get a sense of like what this whole piece is going to sound like from start to finish. And then I could even go a step further and I could subtract one of the parts just by muting it. And that provides them like a rehearsal material. They can now play their own part with the other 4 or 5 players and not their own part on that recording. So like now they can even get a sense of like what they would sound like in the middle of this ensemble, and in a very like in tune, perfectly crafted like recording of it, which I think would be really helpful, especially because like I can't even be there in the rehearsal to kind of give my points. It's all there for them to like interpret from there, and that I think is gonna prepare them for when they actually get in the room together to rehearse, which has been useful. Wouldn't you say so, Devin?
Yeah, I know it's I mean, like I was mentioning, it's been really hard, not having the motivation because there's no concerts to play, but also like our skill of playing with people in real time and in the flesh, it's a lot different than collaborating over Zoom. So this process of having a track to play with, because it feels so different to play by yourself with headphones on with your part, to really imagine and put yourself in that seat of like you're at the rehearsal, you're playing your part and you hear everything but you, and so you're able to fit into the material, into the texture, in a unique way that a lot of us musicians haven't been playing together or with other people. So that's going to help us in our preparation. We're really excited to rehearse and record this at the beginning of April, and we'll be doing this at Julia de Burgos Cultural Arts Center for about 3 days. The recording process is grueling because you basically have to get it perfect. Like that's basically where this idea of perfection comes in. You hear recordings and they are perfect because you have multiple days to get it right, and you can patch things together if they don't. Little secret that I just revealed, but it is still a grueling process because you have to be so in sync with each other. You have to know your musicians. You have to know the part really well. So this extra effort by Brian to get all of the recordings minus a part for each is really helpful.
Actually, I was thinking about this. This is kind of nice because normally like musicians have such busy, hectic schedules that it's like they'll do a quick prep and then it's the day of the rehearsal and like that's when they really start doing the work. And just because things are slower, they've had time with just the score, just looking at the full score of what's going on around their part. Like they've been afforded so much more time to really focus and give this piece their all, and then come recording time, give it, create something really great. So, of course, I'm sad that like you guys aren't performing more, but I'm kind of happy that you get to spend so much time with my piece.
Yeah, that's going to be really to get to have time to spend with one piece. Musicians are gigging all the time, and you're playing orchestra pieces and you're preparing all different kinds of repertoire. So it's very rare. I know a lot of musicians actually are coming from Holy Week, so some of them are playing organ or recording services that weekend prior to when we're recording April 5th through 7th. So it's going to be a really great experience to rehearse and record this. And something I just would love to point out is, of course, we've received funding from Julia de Burgos Cultural Arts Center for this project, but I've also received a fellowship from the Cleveland Foundation for the Minority Arts and Education Fund that's helping to support this project. But the funding that we received was with the live performance, one live performance in mind, which is a smaller budget. Now that we've added video and recording and just a lot more logistics involved, finding a venue for the dancers to rehearse and record, it's an expensive endeavor. So we're doing really well in a crowdfunding campaign that I'm going to post the link here so you can check out. We have a website for this project, strangers-ballet.com, and there you'll be able to find information about the crowdfunding that we have on GoFundMe, where I think we're about $3,000 in, and which is great out of a $8,000 goal. And soon you'll be able to meet the musicians and meet the dancers. And by the time that this film is finished, there will be a whole new page with a portal to view the film when we start doing screenings. So this is a very exciting time. We're really buckling down and getting this project ready for presentation.
Thank you so much. I can't even comprehend all of the coordination and dedication that goes into, a creative team across different states and conceiving just a completely new production despite it all, and then having to change the format of it. So this is obviously a super creative and dedicated team, and I'm really excited to see what you come up with. Even the little glimmers today have been really inspiring and really moving. So I'm just grateful that Strangers continues, and this summer we'll be able to share in it. And there's even this iteration of the piece that none of you have even seen, with the music and the dancing and the film all coming together. Like there's still so much to discover about the piece. So are there any final points? I'll be sure to share links to the website and to the GoFundMe. We'll have all of that information in the description of this event. So please, if you're still watching, please engage with the project, continue to stay plugged in. And of course, Julia de Burgos Cultural Arts Center will continue to post about and share and spread the word about Strangers as it continues into the summer, which I'm also very excited for.